Hi, you're watching the development vlog for Shokken, a multi-platform waitlist management tool soon to be available on Android and iOS. This is Bill, and this is week 54 of development. The current status is the Android and iOS alpha versions are ready and available for testing on Google Play Store and iOS App Store. Last week, there were two tasks. The first task was applying and getting approved the LLC as well as all the associated company side filings. And the second task was using the freshly approved LLC to apply and get approved for SMS messaging service access for toll-free numbers with my upstream service provider. I'm glad to report that both are complete. For the company filing, it was surprisingly easy and straightforward. The state makes it very straightforward and easy to file. Now, to be fair, my state doesn't actually make it very cheap to do so. Every year, the company filing as well as the business license cost, some money. Definitely more than a lot of other states, approaching sort of the top quartile, I suppose, in the nation for filing fees. That said, they're very quick, and everything was done under a day. So I submitted my application with my registered agent, and within the same day, it was approved, and then I had all the paperwork. It was all good and ready to go. Then, with the freshly approved state documents, I went to the IRS and went through their online system to sign up for a EIN. It's sort of like the social security number for a business. This, technically speaking, given that I currently don't expect any revenue coming in anytime soon, I don't really need an EIN. However, it is good to have because number one, makes you look more legit in the eyes of other businesses, and number two, it provides an identification number. It's an ID that other businesses can use to make sure that you are, number one, who you say you are, and number two, you are a legit business as opposed to a fly-by, drive-by business or some other entity. So that's also done. And the interesting thing about this is that the IRS doesn't, at least from my experience, doesn't really do anything on the online process. The online application for EIN, it was woefully straightforward. They don't verify anything. They just ask a bunch of information from you. Obviously, you, of course, probably in the terms and conditions, you supply this information under the penalty of perjury. So if you're lying, I'm sure at some point, if they wanted to get you, they could get you. That said, though, EID seems to be fairly fragile in terms of the actual verification, if that makes any sense. In any case, it worked to my benefit in that it just got approved within seconds, probably 5 to 10 seconds after I clicked the submit button. It actually took less time than my last credit card took to give me the EIN. In any case, so that EIN LLC is formed with the state. EIN is now obtained from the IRS. And after that, for the purpose of Google developer account as well as Apple developer account, I'd have to receive a DUNS number, which is a sort of another company identification number, but this time not issued by any government agency. This is issued by a private company. And Google and Apple seem to really like this number, and they want this number if you're signing up your developer account as a legal entity, or if you want to convert your personal account to a entity account. So that application was submitted. The interesting part about this number, DUNS number, is that they do verification. And as far as I can work out, they do that manually. Because after you sign up, obviously there's no immediate response to this. If the verification is automated, typically the system would give you a decision. If they can verify all the information, then they just issue you the number directly. If they can't, then they'll be like, okay, we need to look at this a bit further, and then we'll give you a call or give you some notification after we've made a decision. But this one, every single application is manually reviewed because they don't give you any decision up front. In addition to that, it takes 30 days for them to give you the number. That by itself is all right. It could be that they're just, they have a lot of workload and stuff like that. That said, they do have an option for you to expedite the review process, and you pay a fee of, I think, something along the lines of $200 to $300, and then you can get your number within 8 days. 8 days. That to me is, they're still not using a lot of automated systems. 8 days sounds like somebody actually digging through the paperwork and verifying it manually, as opposed to having an automated system set up. In any case, DUNS, that application is submitted, and when I get it, it's probably going to be 3 or 4 update videos from now. So I don't have that number yet. As a result, I cannot convert my existing Apple developer account and Google developer account into an enterprise entity account. So that's the legal filing side of things. And on top of that, one of the other things that I did literally yesterday was that I went to a bank and opened a business checking account. One of the most important things to do when you actually run an LLC business for your app business, or really for any business, is that now you have the responsibility of separating your transactions from your personal transactions. So all the business expenses, as well as the transactions and all the upstream services that I use, all the developer tools that I pay for and stuff like that, it would have to go from my personal credit cards and accounts to a business credit card and account. In addition to that, I'm in the process of investigating accounting software that would go well with the business checking account that I have. I'd have to, every year you have to do company filing for your business activities, as well as financial records and stuff. Even if you don't have revenue, I mean, I do have expenses, right, that I'm incurring during the process of development. All these things. I mean, I could use Excel, but I think at this stage, with very little accounting background, it would benefit me to use a helping hand from some automated software. I'm not talking about actually hiring somebody to do that for me. I'm nowhere close to that point yet. But I think paying for a little piece of software to guide me through the things I don't know, that I think that'd be helpful. So checking account is opened, but the accounting software has not yet been investigated. Well, I'm investigating. The decision hasn't been made. And that's one of the tasks for next week. So that's for the businessy legal side of things that I completed or started completing last week. The technical side of things was very interesting. I use an upstream SMS messaging service provider. I can't just directly send SMS messages directly from the devices for a number of reasons. One of the smaller reasons is that, like, if you're trying to use the device that you install the app on and use that device to send SMS, the device, number one, may not have the capability of sending SMS if you have a tablet without. Well, if you have a tablet, most tablets cannot. I don't know if you're aware of this. Most tablets cannot send SMS messages. They're not provisioned for that. Even if the tablet can accept a eSIM or a physical SIM, you can get data from it, but that doesn't mean that you get other cellular services. I'm not aware of a single tablet sold in the United States outside of, like, imported stuff where you can actually send SMS. So that's number one. And obviously, for the intended audience for my app, the tablet format is the format that I would expect most users to be using the app in. Of course, I'm developing a responsive design, so if some host would like to use the app on their phone when they're, like, going around, and it might be easier to navigate on a phone, to hold a phone, my app can do that. But I'm expecting the vast majority of the use cases would be a tablet at the host stand, and then the person would click buttons to summon the parties whenever their table's ready. So on those tablets, SMS is just you can't do that. That's a small technical hurdle with regards to sending SMS. Because presumably what you could argue is that, maybe you can say that people who want to use your app, they have to have a phone that can send SMS. The bigger hurdle is compliance. Spam messages are a headache, and I agree. I personally receive a lot of spam messages. I don't know the ins and outs of the regulation that's currently in place. I don't know how effective they are, but what I do know is that if you want to send SMS, you have to play by the rules. Otherwise, well, not only are you going to get into some legal trouble with the authorities, or you got a license for that, but you might also run into throttling. So they might not penalize you, they might not sanction you, but they would, for instance, prevent you from sending messages straight up, or throttling you, or putting limits on your message sending system. For a notification system you're trying to build for your guests that really lives and dies on reliability, you cannot have that happen. So that's why I'm using an upstream service provider, and part of their value proposition is the compliance services that they provide. So in other words, if I follow their instructions that they have the entire house of lawyers to figure out, if I follow their instructions, I can be mostly comfortable in knowing that whatever I do in my app, again, abiding by their instructions, would be legal and good to go. And as a result, I can pass that confidence down to my customers, the people, the restaurants that would use my app, that whatever they do in my app, so long as I tell them that they can do that, it's good to go. So that's my upstream SMS service provider. Now, it sounds fairly straightforward. It is and it isn't. It is in the sense that I don't have to hire lawyers to help me figure out compliance. It isn't because the legal requirements this is no longer legal. This is the provider requirements that they have for me to give me even a number to start sending SMS messages was way more complicated than signing up for a cell phone service. Last week, I alluded to briefly there's 3 types of numbers that you can have. And I learned new things this week that I didn't know last week, which is quite interesting. But let's take a step back a little bit. If you want to use any upstream service, SMS service provider to send SMS messages to your customers, you really have 3 different types of numbers to choose from. Number 1 is the 10-digit long code, and it's shortened as 10DLC. The second option is toll-free. The third option is shortcode. The 10DLC number is any number that resembles a normal phone number. It would have a normal area code, let's say 917 for New York, and then a 3-digit code and then a 4-digit code. So it's a 10-digit long code, 10DLC. This number appears to other people as just another cell phone user or another, fixed phone user, just another human being. And as a result, the compliance requirement on this number is the most stringent. To be able to send SMS messages on this number, you could apply as a sole individual. But even if you get approved, your total number of messages that you can send, to be more precise, the total number of segments that you can send per day is 3,000. And one segment is 160 characters if you don't use complicated Unicode texts or stuff like that. And I believe if you start using emojis and stuff like that, the segment would have to be converted to UTF-8, which reduces the total number of characters you can fit in a segment from 160 to 70. So every day you have 160 ASCII segments that you can send. And that's not a lot. So every message that I send is about roughly 2, let's say 2 segments. So every day I can send 1,500 segments. And if your restaurant has 100 customers that need to use the app a day, which is really not a lot of customers if you think about this, 100 customers, every customer receives 3 text messages signing up with the tracking link, the seating, you're ready to be seated, and then thank you right afterwards, after you're seated, so that the customer would know that the they're removed from the list or the wait list. 6 segments per customer. 100 customers is 600 segments. And every day I have 3,000. So I can service 5 restaurants if their volume is as low as 100 segments per day before I run out of my quota. This doesn't work. You could upgrade to be a company and then apply for SMS service using a 10 DLC, 10-digit long code. This has its own problems. Sure, your daily throughput can be massively increased to tens of thousands of messages, which at this point for me is more than enough. So daily quota is no longer a consideration here. It's no longer a concern. The problem with this is that because this number appears to end users as just another phone number, not a business number, stuff like that, the regulation requires that every single business that wants to send messages through this number to their customers would have to apply for its own campaign. A campaign is essentially just an application to use a particular 10 DLC to send messages to customers. What this means for my app is that if I want to get somebody on board to use my app through 10 DLC, I would have to go through the compliance experience with my customer so that their campaign can be approved, and then they can start using the 10-digit long code number to start sending SMS to their customers. I have to do that for every single restaurant that onboards my app. I don't have to tell you how ridiculous and insane this can be. If you're developing an app, a service, bespoke for 1 or 2 companies, you could do that. You could develop 20 to 30, 40, 50% of your time to go through the compliance requirements and go through the paperwork and all of that to help that business get the approval. But if you're building an app you're trying to publish on Google Play Store, Apple App Store, where you're targeting more of a retail market as opposed to strictly a B2B market with a B2B service focus, you can't afford to do that. Not only do you not have enough time to do that, do you really think that the businesses looking for a quick fix to their solutions, to their waitlist solutions, would have the patience of setting up an appointment with you, waiting for that appointment to take place, and then deciding whether or not they want your service, and then go through all the paperwork with you? That's not going to happen. I mean, I could daydream, but that's never going to happen. In a million parallel universes, that's never happened. And to quote the things that I saw on the internet, of all things that has never happened, this has never happened the most. In any case, so this is not really practical. So 10 DLC is out of the picture for me. Ideally, I would love to use shortcodes. Shortcodes are those phone numbers that you see like it's only got 5 or 6 digit numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 1, 2, 3, those numbers. It's very clear to the end user that these numbers are not just from another phone subscriber. These numbers come from businesses, right? Businesses that have a reason to send you text messages. And as a result, their approval process, as far as I understand, because I didn't go through this process, but their approval process, as far as I understand, is not as stringent as the 10 DLC application process. And on top of that, they have massive, massive daily quotas in terms of the total number of segments you can send every day. And they have massive, massive throughput that you can push through. They start at 100 messages per second. I don't need 100. I love to have 100 messages per second. I don't need 100 messages per second. So like the whole shortcode is sort of the holy grail for the app that I'm trying to build. And as you can imagine, if it's so good, then what's the cost? Well, the cost is its cost. It's very expensive to rent. If I were to rent a phone number, a short code phone number for me to be able to send text messages from my upstream service provider, a phone number starts at $1,000 a month. I just want to take a step back and if you have $1,000 a month extra in your bank account, what would you like to do? I like to go to many nice restaurants. I like to maybe take a nice weekend vacation or save 2, 3, 4 months and then take a longer vacation, right? I think these are more priorities for me than having a short code. So short code is at this point out as well. It's my dream, but it's way too expensive. That leaves us with toll-free. Toll-free numbers seem to be a nice middle ground between short codes as well as 10DLC. They are more personal. They come from an 800 number, the toll-free number, so that end users might be more familiar with them. They do look more institutional. They don't look like your Uncle Bob from a neighbor or something sending you a text message. And as a result, they don't have the compliance complexities in the same way that a 10-digit long code does. On the other hand, they also don't have the exorbitant cost associated with a 5 or 6-digit short code. And to rent a number is actually fairly affordable. Their biggest issue is their throughput. They have a fairly low throughput to begin. Currently, with the service provider that I use, if you start with a toll-free number sending SMS messages, your throughput is limited to 3 MPS, 3 messages per second. Now, given the fact that every message that I send, I estimate that message to be about 2 segments. So I'm looking at serving about 1.5 customers per second during peak times. And this is another important thing to mention. The app that I'm currently building, the notification app, of course, I'm not terribly worried about the total number of number of messages I can get every day, so long as I can get enough. The bigger problem for me is throughput. And notification, by definition, has to be timely. And if your notification sits in a queue waiting for it to be pushed out because you don't have enough throughput, somebody's looking to be seated and the restaurant can't send the notification to that person until 15 minutes after their seat is up. I mean, nobody's going to use your app. So throughput is something that I have to watch out be very careful about. Now, obviously, with one restaurant, 3 MPS would be more than enough. Every second, 1.5 person gets served, and I would imagine that the throughput of the host stand is going to exceed that handily. Oh, sorry, it's not going to exceed that, right? The rate limit that I would have with 3 MPS would exceed the throughput of the host stand very handily. I don't know at what point, I'd probably have to do some simulation, Monte Carlo simulation, to figure out how many restaurants and how big of those restaurants would have to be before the throughput becomes a problem. Now, fortunately, I have built-in analytics, which means that in real time, I can see the situation with regards to SMS message sending and if I can see any congestion. If I do see congestion, then there are fortunately options to upgrade the throughput for toll-free numbers from 3 MPS to 25, I believe, is the next echelon tier. And then you can go all the way up to 300. I think by the time you get to 300, you might as well just rent a short code because the monthly fee to upgrade your throughput on your 800 number is actually quite high as well. After 2 to 3 upgrades, you'd be looking at more than what you would pay for a short code. So you might as well just go to short code. That said, though, this is a good sort of bootstrap option, at least for me to onboard the first pilot users. They can be sure that their messages can be sent and received on time, and I can be sure that I control my costs on my end so that I don't bleed to death within 3 months of launch. Anyway, so to summarize, last week, legal entities were set up as well as all the associated legal requirements surrounding the legal entity for last week. Still waiting on some numbers coming from a private DUNS number so that I can upgrade my Apple and Google developer accounts to an organizational account. In addition to that, I applied and have been approved for one toll-free number, and I can begin using that toll-free number in my app to start seriously testing the SMS sending capability of this app. The goal for next week is number one, figuring out more of the business side of things, determine a particular accounting software that I want to use and pair it up with the bank account that I just opened. In addition to that, I want to start squashing more bugs in the app and polishing the experience, and start thinking about writing marketing materials for this particular app. I definitely want a landing page for the app explaining what it is, building confidence, number one, conveying the message to my potential users what the app does, highlight my value proposition, which is the easiest thing that you'll do. I take care of all the shit in the background so that you don't have to. And it's one tap download, one tap sign in, and then you start using. In addition to that, build trust. It's important to let your users understand you and make sure that they trust you as somebody who backs the services that they'll depend on. So unfortunately, none of those messages can get out without marketing. And that's one side of the things that I really have to start looking into now that we're getting closer to the actual real world testing as well as onboarding first pilot users. That's it for this week. I'm looking at 26 minutes. That's incredible. I can talk to a camera for 26 minutes. In no time, I will become Flossie Carter. I'll see you next week.